Humanities 213, 2016 Spring E2. My name is Riste Simnjanovski. If you can roll your R's, it's Riste. Most people can't, so they'll say Riste or Risti, which is totally fine with me. They'll say Dr. S, and they'll look at my last name, Simnjanovski, and they'll be very intimidated and expect like a 60-year-old Russian guy. So when they see me, it's sort of a different, clashing dichotomy of what they expected and what they see. My parents are Macedonian Slavic, so if you know where the boot of Italy is, it's where the heel of Italy is. Across the water to the right, a landlocked little country. Used to be part of the former Yugoslav Republic, and then they got in a pretty massive civil war, and then we got our own country, and for a little while our own currency, which people know, if you know anything about currency, is probably a bad idea to print your own money without anything backing it, but what do I know? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to introduce myself, I'll introduce this class, I'll talk about the syllabus as well as some different things that you might notice in here, specifically this little achievements tab right there. See, I'm highlighting it on the left. I'll talk about the syllabus, and then I'll get into week number 1, and I'll overview what you're going to be working on for this week. So first things first, you're going to notice that there's a little achievements tab here, and as you go through this class, there's nothing that you have to do differently, but I've enabled this sort of hidden part of Blackboard. Part of my administrative work here at Cal Baptist is I get to build classes, and so I get to build the classes that you take. If you've taken any online and professional studies classes, my hands have probably been on there somewhere. If it's an older class, maybe not so much, but a lot of the newer ones are so the 500 or so that we house here at CBU. I've gotten to help build a lot of those classes. So one of the things that I get to do is demo out some new things, and this achievements tab is a demonstration. We're trying it out and seeing how it works. So give us feedback. Tell us if you like it or not. As you complete different tasks in Blackboard, you'll actually earn achievements, and they'll sort of illuminate in there. So I'm going to click on it now just to kind of show you what that looks like. And you'll notice that there's a little area here where these images are starting to load, and they're kind of shaded away. As you earn them, so in the All Achievements tab, these will actually illuminate. You can click on these little icons here, and they'll actually tell you what's required, and then also you can kind of see some different data. You can see the ones that you've earned just by clicking on that, and obviously since I haven't earned anything. And again, here's my name, but when you log in, it'll be your name, and it'll show all of the achievements that you've earned. There's also a couple of hidden achievements, so as you go through the class, you may actually earn different achievements based on certain things that you do if you get like an extra credit on this type of assignment or something like that. So that's the achievements tab. Nothing that you have to do differently, but as you go through the class, kind of cool to see some of these illuminate as you sort of hit these mile markers in our class. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the syllabus, and we're going to talk about this class and what's going to happen for the next 8 weeks or so. So once you're inside, you're going to notice it's a little bit different here. There's a syllabus icon or a link, and then there's also the introductions. Feel free to introduce yourself. There's information in there as well, probably more than you want to know about me. You get to know myself, you get to know a little bit about my family, what we do, and as well sort of my background and pedigree, so that you know that I'm just not a guy, a bum off the street that they brought in to teach this humanities class. So click on the syllabus if you'd like to get to know the class, and click on the introductions if you'd like to get to know me. So first things first, you're going to notice that this is Integrated Humanities 1. It's a 3-unit class, so hopefully you're taking it probably as a Gen Ed unless you're a poli-sci major, which may be on your track with regard to your degree. So if you're taking this, odds are you're probably taking it as a Gen Ed requirement. For folks that don't know what humanities is, it's kind of fun. A lot of folks will take history classes. Obviously, they know what history is. They take a humanities class and have no idea what the term humanities is. The thing that breaks my heart is people can get through 8 weeks or 16 weeks, or they can get 2 or 3 terms of humanities, and by the end still have no idea what humanities is. So I'm going to tell you right off the bat that humanities is history, but it's through the arts. Now imagine when you took history in middle school or high school, you basically learn who conquered who, what were sort of the big wars, who were the big players, what languages did they speak, what religions, what faiths, that kind of stuff. And then basically you figure out sort of currency, and then what kept them, if they were sort of a high flyer or low flyer. And a lot of times you learn the history, but it's told through the victor's perspective. And what I mean by that is, if you were conquered and your entire society was obliterated, odds are there's not going to be a whole lot of people telling that story. So the history actually might itself be skewed. The humanities is a little bit different. The humanities is history, the history that you know, or you think you know, but it's told through the arts. So it could be told through a letter or a journal that someone had written that was found later on. It could be told through the artist's perspective. It could be told through literature, sculpture, painting, all of that kind of stuff. So imagine the different perspective that you might get, or think about it from this perspective. If there is a war going on, or if there's famine, or if there's starvation, or if there's any of that kind of stuff, what is that going to do to people who are in that society? What will their poetry look like? What will it sound like? What will their sculptures and their paintings, what will those things look like? And so that's where you kind of get the real feel for the history. And I think a lot of folks that have never taken a humanities class before, they immediately realize that this is a real more, ironically, it's a more human way of looking at the world. Folks that will, can watch a History Channel thing and be like, okay, 5,000 people were killed or whatever, and then all of a sudden means nothing to you. And you go through and you actually read a letter from a mother who lost a daughter or a son or a husband or something like that. And we get a lot of those kinds of emotions where people are like, I knew about this war, I knew about that, but then reading this letter or this poem or looking at this sculpture, it sort of it got under my skin a little bit. And it sort of made me a little emotional. So don't think that that's not a normal experience in this class. There's a lot of that kind of stuff where a lot of folks who aren't history people will love this class, and there's also a lot of historians that may take offense with some of the things because they're saying, well, that's not exactly what it says in the history book. And I'll say, absolutely, it's exactly what it doesn't say in the history book because it's told from the real world. It's told from the people who were actually experiencing it. I think that's the part that you're going to enjoy in this class. So, enough of me rambling. Let's get rolling into this class. A 3-unit class. Here's the course description. All y'all can read, so no need for me to go through that. Online learning, it basically just talks about CBU online. Here's important stuff. Here's all my contact information. Simnjanovski, again, it's a strange Slavic name. Dr. S is totally fine with me, or Dr. Riste, which I get a lot. Totally cool as well. Here's my location if you want to get a hold of me. Here's the office line if you want to get a hold of me via, phone call. I always tell folks if you want to get a hold of me, the easiest way is to shoot me an email because then my phone will ring, my watch will ring, sirens will go off, and then I can at least respond to you and say, hey, I got the email. Let me look into it if I don't know the answer. If I do know the answer, I'll get you the answer right away. It's adorable that we have these hours listed here. I work all the time, so if you want to get a hold of me on a Saturday or Sunday, shoot me an email. Don't assume that just because it's not within these hours, I'm not going to respond to you. I will respond to you when I get the email. So, going down a little bit more, you're going to notice that there's only one textbook required. It's this Fierro text. It's a 2010 edition. There is a newer edition available. I encourage students to actually use this one. The campus store may actually have the 7th edition, which is perfectly acceptable. You can totally use the 7th edition. Don't yell at the campus store if they don't have the 6th edition or a used version. But if you do want to try to get your hands on an older edition, you can. It'll work totally fine for this class. If you're using the newest edition, that's fine as well. That's probably what the campus store can carry because they have limitations on, getting the older editions and all that. But if you want to find an old one on Amazon or half or whatever, just make sure you get expedited shipping so you can get it here on time, or you're buying one from sort of the western part of the United States. Going down a little bit more, you're going to see the goals and objectives of this course. These are the goals for the class. This is where it aligns to the general ed requirements. So this, if you've never been explained this, these SLOs stand for student learning outcomes. These numbers represent a specific goal or objective at the program level, and then the USOs are the ones at the university level. So think of this like Google Earth. If this is zoomed way out, you're seeing the entire Earth, and then you're zoomed into like the United States, this would be sort of zooming into a state or a city or a province or something like that, and then vice versa. So this is how all of this stuff is transparent. The reason we do this is that you're not doing things in class that will basically go and sort of be busy work. We don't like busy work here. We know that folks are busy. We know that they have jobs, they have lives, they have careers and kids and all that kind of stuff. And so when you're doing something in this class, it's actually building on something else. You're going to learn it because you have to use it somewhere later on. So these are the goals and objectives of the class, how they relate to the program, and then how they relate to the university and vice versa. So by the end, you'll be familiar with all of this stuff. Down here are quick explanations of what you'll be doing in this class. There's some journals, there's some written assignments, there's some museum tours. Now you're not actually required to go to the museum. We actually bring the museum to you, meaning that you're going to go through sort of a virtual reality type thing where you can actually see the museums in person. Some museums don't allow us to do that, and so we use Google Art Projects, which is basically like Google Earth. And imagine, when you get the street view on like Google Maps, and you can see the front of the house and the streets and all that kind of stuff. stuff, they took those 360 cameras and basically put them inside the museum, so you can actually turn around and look at all of the museum stuff as well. If it makes you dizzy, give me a heads up, and then there's also a way that you can toggle and just look at the images one by one, which is okay as well. So some folks that have played like video games where you can have like a first person kind of turning around and you're controlling everything, it'll be really sort of intuitive for you. If you're uncomfortable with it, I say give it a try first, and if it makes you dizzy, then you can go to the toggle back and just look at the images and the pieces of art and sculpture, that kind of stuff, one by one. So those are the museum tours. There's weekly quizzes every week. Don't stress out. I sort of throw the quizzes as just kind of a spot check to make sure that your heads are in the book. If you're someone that immediately gets anxiety, so I say quiz and you get scared, or you're like, oh gosh, I have to like memorize and blah blah blah. That's not how I do it. You'll be able to take a lot of these quizzes multiple times, so you can actually see the questions, prepare yourself. If you're someone that does get a little nervous, you'll have a good time with the quizzes because you'll know sort of what's coming up. With these quizzes too, if you ever get to the point where you take it a couple times and you're still not doing well, give me a heads up and we can kind of work together to make sure that you're getting the scores that you need. But I don't use the quizzes as a gotcha moment. I use them as an opportunity for you to go, okay, this is the important stuff. I'll learn this, and then I'll be able to go and retrieve it, find it in the book, and then respond in the class correctly. So that's the idea. I'm not one of those people that's going to go and say how you didn't read it or you didn't memorize it or something. If you can get big themes and concepts, you're going to do great in this class. There is a PowerPoint presentation. It doesn't have to be PowerPoint. It can be, you can use Prezi or any of that kind of stuff, or any of the sort of the Web 2.0 tools if you like, as long as it's universal, meaning that people can go and quickly view it. They don't have to have a specific software platform or anything like that. If you're using a Mac and you've got Keynote as your sort of equivalent PowerPoint presentation, totally okay to use, but make sure you save it as a .pdf or a .ppt or .pptx, so that folks that are using PowerPoint, which is sort of the standard, will be able to view it. And then folks also that have a Mac but may not have Keynote can open it on their Microsoft Office suite, which is loaded on there. There's a final exam in this class. It'll basically be a culmination of all of the quizzes. So if you do well in the quizzes, you'll do well in the final exam. Last thing in this class is the critical assignment, which is an integrated research paper. You get to pick the topic, and you'll be aware of it from week number 1. So you'll notice inside of week number 1, I'm actually going to be talking about the critical assignment, what you should be doing. Usually there's 6 to 8 pages. I tell folks that by the end of this class, you'll have so much information that you will sort of be angry at me that you're like, I can only write 6 pages, I can only write 8 pages, because it might take you a couple of pages to kind of get into the background. So you'll say, well, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about the Greeks, and I'm going to compare them to the Chinese civilization. And you might go through that and try to explain, but it might take you a page or two just to explain the Greeks. It might take you a page or two to explain China and the specific area that you're looking at. And then by the time you're done there, you're at 4 pages, and now all of a sudden you're trying to scramble to show your comparison and contrasting and all that kind of stuff. So I always tell folks that you're going to have so much information that you need to be able to pare down some of the info that you've got. You'll want to have 5 resources. Resources are acceptable as obviously our textbook. Any of the PowerPoints that are going to be listed here count as separate resources as well. So you can say you can reference PowerPoint week 1, PowerPoint week 2, and then the textbook, and that gives you 3 references right off the bat. Please don't ever use Wikipedia for this class. So you might sort of have some background info, or you're reading the textbook and you're a little confused. You hop onto Wikipedia to try to get some clarity and then go back into the book. That's fine, but don't use Wikipedia as your primary source for sort of citing your content. I always tell folks to be really cautious on the internet as well. You and I could go and create a website and put something about someone, and basically that sort of becomes common knowledge as opposed to sort of truth that's been vetted. So just be taking a look at that as well. Don't use Wikipedia on any assignment. Critical assignment obviously has to be passed. It's 100 points. If you were to look at that as a critical assignment passing score, that would be a 70% or above in an undergraduate class. So you need to pass that plus all of the points in class. Here's how the class is broken down point-wise. It's out of 1,000, which makes it really easy for you to know sort of where you are point-wise. As you're going through, you can sort of just do a quick decimal movement, and if you're at 750 points, then that means that you have a C in the class, and as long as you pass the critical assignment, then you're going to be golden as you move through. Odds are that most folks, though, when you're going through this class, you'll want to be in the AB range just because it sort of gives you a cushion. If you do well, you're great, and if you're not, you can at least get some extra credit and sort of be bumping that score. I'm not going to go through all of the learning activities because I will talk about week number 1, but I want you to know that all the learning activities and things that you're going to be doing are listed here, with the caveat that these will say week 1, day 6, which would be Saturday, and this is week 1, day 7, which would be Sunday. And just know that anything that's in here, I always get a couple of students that will email me and say, I don't understand. So I'll try to clarify it as much as I can. Anything that's due during the week is a soft due date. And what I mean is that you won't be marked down for this journal 1 if you turn it in on Sunday. I just try to have people break them up a little bit because what ends up happening is you get a little stressed and people say, okay, I need to do this, but it's not due until Sunday, and so I'm going to wait a little longer. So I put these soft due dates in here to sort of encourage people to get them done. It also is one of those things where I've had some folks with spouses that'll say, hey, let's go out Saturday night, and the students are stressed out and they say, well, I can't because Dr. S, he's a bully, and he said that I have to have this in by Saturday night. So if you want to make me the bad guy with the spouse and say that you have to, get your work done on Saturdays, totally okay, but it is all just due on the Sunday of every week. So week 1, all of the work will be due Sunday, and that's after that. So if it was like week 2, day 1, which would be the Monday after week 1 ended, that's when things would start to be marked late. But until that Sunday, you're okay. These are just soft due dates to help you kind of spread out the work. You can turn things in early throughout the week. That's no big deal. So feel free to turn things in, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday along the way, and you're going to be totally fine. The only caveat with due dates is going to be in week number 8, where everything is going to be due. It's going to say here day 3, which is a Wednesday. Everything will be due day 5. Now I put that in there to kind of encourage you to get your paper in on time. And also, if you get it in by this day 3, if you want to get feedback, I can get it back to you by day 5. So if you turn it in on a Wednesday, I can get it back to you by Friday. And if you don't like your score, you'll have hopefully another day or so. I can give you till Saturday or so, and you can kind of make some tweaks and get your paper scored away. So, but everything in this class, the last day to turn in anything would be theoretically on Friday. I might push it till Saturday if people need a little bit of extra time. Here's information on professionalism. I do my best to get grading back to folks as quickly as I can. Late policy is pretty straightforward, with the caveat that if you ever need extra time, I always tell students to email me or call me before and say, hey, you know what, I'm pulling a double shift, or my kids are sick, or my husband or wife, was in a car accident, or whatever's going on in your life. First, give me a heads up if it's okay to pray for you. I'd love to be able to do that. And then also, second, if you tell me in advance, hey, I'm having a tough week, I need a couple of extra days, I'm more than happy to give you the extra days, and then also not deduct any points. So just give me a heads up. If we're all on the same page, then we're golden there. Etiquette is a really easy way of saying etiquette online. There is an opportunity where, as you're behind the computer, you're going to disagree with people, especially in this type of a class where there's sort of there's some sensitive subjects that we cover. And as we're going through, just make sure that you're respectful and kind when you're disagreeing with folks. It's okay to disagree with folks. You don't have to be disrespectful. We will disagree on a pretty regular basis, and you'll see there's one thing that we do in this class that's kind of cool that actually lets you disagree with the content being delivered to you, which is pretty cool. Don't cheat in this class. It's a pretty easy class to get caught cheating in, so a lot of folks will go and try to pull a paragraph or something online. If it doesn't say that it's getting turned in through SafeAssign, which is kind of like Turn It In, where it's a plagiarism checklist, every single assignment in this class is checked against a plagiarism database, so just be really, really careful as you're submitting work. I would rather you summarize on your own and get a B than you try to copy someone else's work and get a 0 on the assignment or something like that. So just always be turning in your own work. If you're ever confused or concerned, shoot me an email before you submit your work. If you have a disability that's documented, email dss@calbaptist.edu, and they'll be able to provide the accommodations that you need. All right, so let's get rolling into week number 1. So I'm going to click on Learning Activities. It's on the left here. And again, this video is going to be a little bit longer than most because I'm covering sort of the introductions, and I'm going to cover the syllabus, but normally they'll be about 10 minutes as I cover just the weekly assignments. So first things first, you're going to notice in these weeks I'll have the dates of the week. So this class is going to start on the 29th, which is strange for a February, right? That's an extra day you get. And then it's going to go through the 6th day of March. So when this video is recorded, it will be posted right here. I'll also email it to folks, so you'll notice that they'll always be listed there. I always tell folks, watch the videos because I give you sort of clues on the assignments for the week. Clicking on week number 1, and let's get right on to our first week. Okay, so week one is loaded for me, and you're going to notice something a little bit different about the way that my week looks versus the way that your week looks. Your week is going to look, you're going to get these kind of cool hyperlinks on this left hand side, and your class is sort of going to scroll left to right, meaning that when you click on one, it's going to pull up the first one. You click on the second one, it's going to move, and you'll have arrows that can kind of take you back and forth. On my view, I have this old school kind of scrolling thing. On your side, it's just going to be one item at a time, so it's a lot cleaner to look at. So just a heads up that when I say I'm going down this way, it means that you're going down on this list, or you're clicking left to right to be able to sort of toggle to the next item. Every single week is going to start with an agenda. It's going to be a quick summary of what's in your syllabus. That way you're not having to hop back into your syllabus, figure it out, and then come back in here. So this is going to give you a quick overview of what you're doing for the week. Kind of cool if you're a visually impaired student as well, because then you can have your screen reader go and read this to you out loud, and you're not having to go back into the syllabus. And then also, if you're someone like me that sort of likes the visual stuff, hopefully this video helps you, or the audio stuff is me talking through it, or just kind of a quick reminder of what you're working on. So you'll notice that we have pretty straightforward, here's the stuff that you explore, which is learning content, and then these are the things at the bottom that you're going to turn in. Here's the part that's different about this class, and one of the things that we really like. We got some really good feedback from students, and one of the big concerns that you run into, especially in a history or humanities class, is that when content gets delivered to you, what happens if you as a student disagree with some of the content? Now, instructors will always tell you, hey, you know what, I encourage debate, I encourage discussion, you can disagree with me and all of that kind of stuff. And it takes a pretty humble ego to do that. And I learned this the hard way when I was getting my doctorate. And I had a professor say, you know what, I want you to challenge me, I want you to question, I want you to ask, hopefully encouraging but also sort of challenging questions. And I did so, and then I had an instructor just sort of blow me up in the middle of class and say, the whole "how dare you" blah 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 type of a thing. And I sort of learned my lesson of like, okay, well, now I've got a decision to make. Do I, one, disagree with the instructor and risk a bad grade or something like that because someone can't control their temper or their ego or something like that? Or two, do I silence myself and disagree sort of quietly and then go along for the ride and pretend like here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm doing? So to remedy that, what we've done is we've got two sets of PowerPoints here. First PowerPoint set you're going to notice is kind of a smaller megabyte. So notice it's only 8.9 megabytes. Pretty easy to download on if you're on DSL, if you're on cable or Fios or anything like that, it's going to go pretty quickly. And then you're going to notice the second set is going to be a larger one, 55 megabytes. So you may want to, if you're on a slower connection, you may want to just start to save these to your desktop in folders, week one PowerPoints. First set are just the text. So if you're someone who's a linguistic person, meaning you're an English major or you're like a psychology major, and you can go through the PowerPoints and totally get it if you just read them. That'll make it nice and efficient for you. If you're someone that wants to hear information presented to you, these PowerPoints here are actually narrated on top, so you can have sort of the option of whatever you'd like. I have had students go listen to the audios and then go back and kind of go back and forth and see if they can remember some of the stuff. However you want to do it is totally okay. Now here's the kicker. The PowerPoint presentations are lectured from a different professor at CBU, meaning that my lectures are in a different class and then this person's lectures are in our class. Now why is that important? Because if you disagree with some of the content, you can feel free to sort of go and say, hey, I disagree with this and here's why, and Resay doesn't get his feelings hurt, and he won't. I'm saying, I'm sort of pulling a George Costanza and talking about myself in third person. I actually genuinely don't, but I can't guarantee that you won't feel that way. And so what we've done is we've actually pulled my lectures out, and now you have a third party in here. So if you disagree with something, I can actually act as a referee and encourage that. And you never know, I might actually be agreeing with you and disagreeing with the way that the content was delivered, which is pretty cool. So that what that does is creates an environment where you can feel safe in disagreement. And then you can also go through and say, hey, I like this, I didn't like this, and we can kind of go from there. But that's why you're going to hear different voices in this class. So don't freak out and be like, hey, that doesn't sound like Restay, okay? So two sets of PowerPoints, it's going to be like that every week. There's a cool little timeline here that we've created. It's basically a quick timeline of the early periods that we're going to cover in this class. We've laid them on top of each other. It took a little bit of time, but basically what you're going to see is sort of as we cover things. Now, the hard part is when you're learning history or humanities, you think, well, chapter 1, that happened, and then chapter 2, then that happened, and chapter 3, then that happened. And it's not exactly how that is. A lot of these things overlap each other. So what was happening in China, there was also something happening in Europe. And those might actually be happening simultaneously in different areas. And so what you're learning with the timeline is seeing where these kind of things overlap to one another. The next thing, the journal. Very, very important. Every single time you're writing a journal, think of it this way. There's two things that you have to do that are important. Number one, you have to summarize. It's basically showing me, hey, restate, I got what was going on. You can kind of read through the chapter. If you're someone that's, it's going to take you a couple times to read through the chapter, I encourage you to read the chapter summaries first, then read the chapter, and then read the summary again. That sort of will sandwich the content in your head. When you're summarizing your chapter, please don't summarize the summary at the end of the chapter. It sounds counterintuitive or it sounds sort of simple, but instead of summarizing what someone else has summarized, go through, read the chapter, and summarize what you felt like were the most important things. Okay, things that you sort of will go through and try to remember. Once you summarize, then you're going to reflect, meaning first part, here's what basically the chapter talked about. The second part, here's how it affects me. Here's how it connects to my graphic design degree or my aviation degree or my kinesiology degree or whatever, and you can kind of connect it that way. There's always some hints at the end that will tell you, hey, as you're going through, you may want to summarize and reflect on the ideas of, for this chapter is going to be archaeology, art, architecture, religious beliefs, and every week they're going to be a little different. So if you need a little help, those are some ideas that you can help with the summary and then the reflection. 200 word minimum typically is about a page. So if it's double spaced font Times New Roman with 1-inch margins, you're going to have about 200 to 250 words. So if you're at 100 or 125 words for your summary and 100 to 125 words for your reflection, you're going to be golden. If it's about a page, you're good. Okay. The next part is a written assignment. You're going to notice that there's 4 questions down here. Based on feedback we've had from student evaluations and those kinds of things, we used to have students respond to all 4, and for this class, I've changed it to just 2, so you can actually pick 2 of these 4 to respond to. So you'll want to be comfortable with all of the questions, but you only have to respond to 2 out of the 4, so you can pick. All right, so you'll want to have about 2 paragraphs per question, and then once you respond to them, you're going to load those questions into this little area here. What I tell folks to do is create them in a Word document and then post that Word document, or create them in a Word document, copy, and then paste it into the written assignment here. Either way, you don't want to have the assignment open as you're trying to complete it, because it might freeze or whatever, or you might just sort of lose your train of thought, or you might just want to be working on it as you're going through. Here's a hint if you're watching this still. Hammurabi, and the Hammurabi's code specifically, is going to be a question I'm going to ask you on your final exam. So if you're watching this 26 minutes in and you want me to throw you a quick early Easter egg, even though it's only February, Hammurabi's code will be covered in your final exam. The second one is going to be the Epic of Gilgamesh. That also will be covered on your final exam. So if you were to pick 2 and 3, I mean, you can pick 1 or 4 if you'd like to as well, but 2 and 3 will actually be concepts that we're going to cover on your final exam. So if it was me, I'd cover at least 2 and 3. If you want to cover the other ones, you can, but 2 and 3 are going to be the really important ones to focus in on. Next thing, the museum tour. You're going to be going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's in New York City. Now, you don't actually have to go there, so you can see a couple of different things. There's the online exhibit on Assyria. You can click on it there. Or you can actually click on this link here and it's going to open. I'm going to open it in a new window and you'll see what I'm talking about. Alright, so I had a little video hiccup there. I'm going to try to put these videos together, but if not, then they'll just be in 2 parts, which is no big deal. So what's ended up loading is, again, I clicked on from this little area here. Now you can click on this exhibit on Assyria as well. I'm going to open that up in a new. And you're going to notice that the Metropolitan Museum of Art has actually opened up some cool images here. So you can actually go and scroll and click on the actual art highlights. You can click on the interactive map and you can kind of look at the art from this perspective. You can also see some more objects in the gallery. So you can kind of click on things, it'll tell you a little bit about it, and then you can connect that art to what we've been learning about in class. This is how you'll do the museum tours, is you're actually going to click on these exhibits and look at the images. Now the cool thing is that when you get into Google Art Projects, which sometimes we have them for the museum tours and sometimes we don't, is when you click on this type of a link, it's going to open up Google Art Project. And if you've never seen this before, it's going to be kind of cool. So you'll see I'm logged in here with my little Gmail account. And what you can do is go one of 2 ways. You can show the items, which is the old school, click on the image, go to the next image, blah, 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 blah. Click on the image, you just see one picture at a time, no big deal. Or you can click on this little person here. Why it has to be a male versus a female, don't ask me. It's our gender bias, I guess. What do I know? And then it's going to put you inside of the museum. Now check this out. You're going to notice that I'm actually inside of the museum, and this pillar here actually has carvings and sculptures kind of on it. I can click and drag, and I can actually turn myself around. Now here's the part that's kind of cool. Notice this little box to the left here, and you're going to see which way it's illuminated. So you're going to see little yellow lights kind of showing one direction, and that's basically the way that I'm looking. And as I turn, those lights are going to turn. So I can kind of scroll and turn. I can click on certain parts and it'll zoom me into certain areas, and I can turn and kind of see some stuff. I can click on different rooms, and I can click on, say, this room, and I can hop in and actually see what the room looks like. I can kind of look up if I want to see what the chandeliers look like. I can scroll down. I can actually go click on certain items, and then if you're sitting in the room and you're like, I want to get a closer look at this one thing or that one thing, you can actually click on certain images. Like, so I'm scrolling down here and I'm going to click on this image, and it's going to give me more of a high def image of what I'm trying to look at. And so you can actually kind of scroll, you can hover, and this is kind of cool as you're going through and looking around. You can hop out of this area. So say you're watching this and you're like, okay, this is a little too much. I'm way confused. It's not working so hot. I don't know what to do. You can hop out of the whole thing as well, and then just click on single images and go through the galleries that way. So whatever's more comfortable for you, but I want you to see that as you're going through. You can also take a look if you're really excited about that stuff and you want to see some different areas. You can kind of take a look at some of these other tours. This one's going to be the Penn Museum at the University of Pennsylvania. I do my best to make sure that these links work. Occasionally, these museums will go in and redirect, and so I think one year it was kind of fun. We had this online exhibit at the Museum of Art in New York City, and we redirected, and it took them to like a link about a Lady Gaga exhibit or something. So if that happens, give me a heads up, and I'll update the link. Okay. Next thing. What you're going to notice here is a museum tour. So once you're done touring the museum, then give me a quick one-page summary of things that you found. Pick a couple of artifacts, pieces of art or sculpture or scripture or whatever you found in there. Could be a little poem or something like that. And then give me a quick summary of what you found, and then reflect on it, meaning, hey, here's how it connects to the book and the PowerPoints and things that we learned, and here's how it connects to me. I've got a kid that plays on a soccer team, and there's this one parent, and then you can talk about how that connects to for whatever. So however you want to connect it that way, but bring the art and the things that we're covering to life. Connect it to you somehow. That's how you'll do these reflections. Last thing this week is going to be a quiz number 1. It says that you have a half-hour period. You got to complete it by the end of week 1, which is totally fine. Most questions are worth 1 point each. I'll tell you that at the end of this week, especially since it's week number 1, a lot of hesitation, a lot of anxiety and nervousness. So I've set this quiz so that you can take it as many times as you want. Go through if you wanted to, take a screenshot or a picture, or take the quiz the first time, see how you do. It'll tell you which ones you missed, and then you can go through and take the quiz a bunch of times. You can go through and look at the book, you can call your friends, you can say, hey, I'm looking on this page, where did you find this answer? For me, that part doesn't matter. What I care is that you learn the material. So how you learn that material and what your process looks like, totally fine with me. So as you're going through, have a little fun on the quiz, being focused more on learning the material as opposed to just getting the right answer. Okay. The last thing this week is you're going to notice that you've got and the last thing on the quiz, when you take it, whatever your highest recorded score is, that's what it's going to keep. So you could take it 10 times, and if your second time was the highest score, that's what it'll keep in the system. The last thing is I've got a little bonus part here. It's going to tell you again, there's always a couple of students that are worried about, why would this be in week 1 or week 2? So what I've done is I've actually posted what the critical assignment instructions are, and then also the rubric that I'm going to score you on. So as you're going through this class, if you wanted to start to frame out your critical assignment, or be thinking as you're going through and reading, and you're going to be in a couple of museums this week, you may want to grab a piece of art or two and start putting things in a folder and saying where you got those things. You may want to use those pieces of art later in the class, and so why not just start to have them saved up and connect them to what you could possibly do. And don't think that for a second that you can't connect something to something else in history, meaning you were going through and you're learning about the Assyrians, and maybe you're learning about the ancient Greeks, and you're writing a paper on the Italian Renaissance. You might actually be able to connect it to the Greeks if you say, oh, that looks really similar to something that we covered here, and here's why. So you can have a little fun with that. That's basically this week in a nutshell. So you've got your rubric there, you've got your quiz 1, your museum tour, your written assignment, and your journal. So what I tell folks is to kind of spread out the work, and then once you've got that, you're going to be golden. So there you go, folks. The quick overview of achievements, the syllabus, the learning activities, and a quick introduction of myself. And again, if you need me, I'm always an email or a phone call away. So God bless, folks. Know that I'll be praying for you as you go through this course, and if you need me for anything, I'm always here. All right, God bless, folks. Welcome to week number 1.